Hello, my name is Hakon and welcome back to my channel and another little tutorial on the Empress Effects Zoia, the modular synthesizer in a little box where the only limitation is your imagination and the CPU, of course. Now, another limitation that some of you may have noticed if you use the Zoia on a pedal board is that you only have 3 switches that you can use to control it with your feet. Of course, there are ways to overcome this. You can use MIDI controllers, you can use pedals, other expression pedals and control pedals. Um, and that's all well and good, but there are ways you can jig something yourself as well. And I'm going to demonstrate one way that you can add 3 more buttons to the existing 3 using just the control port and some very simple electronics. So, just for demonstration, I have now made my little prototype here. I do apologize that the buttons are so small you can probably hardly see them there on the video, but trust me, they are there. If you're watching this on a small screen, there are 3 small tiny black buttons there. So if I push the one on the left here, you can see this is lighting up. If I push the one in the middle, this is lighting up. Push the one on the right, this is lighting up. That's just visual, really. Push both on the left, both on the right, and all 3. Because the thing is, when you do this, you also have to make sure that all combinations of buttons are registered correctly by the Zoia as well. So how do we do this? Well, let's start with the control port. So the control port on the Zoia is takes a TRS jack, so a tip ring sleeve. It sends out a signal on the ring, it receives on the tip, and the sleeve is the ground connection. And for this little trick, of course, we need the control port not to be used for anything else. And also we need some way of getting these 3 signals split out to our little breadboard electronics project here. What I've done, because I use this for interfacing with my phenol synth, I've already got a single TRS to triple banana jack splitter here. So I've got tip, ring, and sleeve, signal in, signal out, and ground connection already on this, ready to do prototyping. So I'm going to plug that back in again. So then we have a module that is the control port CV output, and I just max that out, and that means it should be sending out about 5 volts. And those 5 volts are then transferred into our little breadboard here and into our patch, and it comes in here and is sent into each of these little buttons in parallel. And the reason it has to be parallel, of course, is that you can't just have the second button only working when you push the first button, for instance. That wouldn't work. They all have to be able to be pushed in any combination, and that will give an output. And now this is the important bit, of course. You need every single combination of these buttons to give you a different voltage value output from this breadboard and back into the Zoia. And this is where I've added 3 potentiometers to reduce the voltage going into each of these, through these buttons and back into the Zoia again. And I'll just very briefly explain how a potentiometer works now in this case. So a potentiometer, this little thing, a pot, a knob, some people might think of it in synth terms. It has 3 legs, and the way it works usually in most electronics is by having the signal coming in on one side. The ground is connected on the opposite side. Which of these sides is which is technically not important. It just changes the direction of whether the value goes up or down when you rotate it, and then the output is in the middle. So each of these buttons has the input from the Zoia, voltage 5 volts, parallel, and then into each of these potentiometers, the voltage input coming in on the left leg, ground connected on the right leg, and that is the ground from the Zoia again. And then the middle is the output, which is sent back into the Zoia via this rail over here. Now, the important bit, as I said, is that each combination of button pushes creates a different value. And for that purpose, I don't know what is ideal here to do, but the thing is that once you combine resistors in parallel, which is effectively what we're doing, the voltage isn't just being added or divided or subtracted, but it's averaged out in a way. So what I have found works rather well, and because I'm doing this for prototyping now, of course, if I were to make a permanent version of this, I would skip using potentiometers and I would put in 2 resistors for each of these instead, after finding values that work well. But for prototyping, it's nice to have something adjustable so you make sure that it works fine. So for the first button here, you see that the value coming back into the Zoia now is 0.2117. The second one comes back with a value of 0.4126, and the last one 0.6067. Now, the important bit here is that there's a bit of a gap between them, and enough of a gap that the voltage coming in allows you to distinguish between every single combination of voltages. So I just adjusted these, just some relatively arbitrary values. Now these values could be completely arbitrary, but what I've chosen to do, and this makes it much easier in the patch as well, is to put the lowest value on the button to the left, the higher value on the one in the middle, and the highest value on the one on the right, and giving them a little bit of a gap between each value. Okay, so what comes next when working on this patch is to make a note of the combinations of button pushes and what value comes back into the Zoia. So this is a bit like a sort of binary table. So of course, being 3 buttons, it's got 8 possible values. It's got 0, which is everything off. And then we have left button, left and middle, right, left, right, middle, right, and all 3. So that's like counting in binary. So, and those values, if you see here, 0.283, 0.83 is a bit different from my table now because I've adjusted it a bit for demonstration. 0.4102 also different. The thing is, by the way, that's another thing when you're working with potentiometers here in parallel, is that changing one will also change the values that come out of the others. Just so you're aware of that. You can't just set one and expect that value to stay if you also adjust something else. So I'll make a note of these different values. So left button, middle button, left and middle, right, etc. And I put it in this little table here. And now the important thing is that these values are significantly different enough that you know that the Zoia can distinguish between them when they come back in. You must assume that it can fluctuate a little bit, and therefore when I'm doing my input values later, I will sort of try to find, I will not get too close to these values in the Zoia's interpretation of the incoming voltage. I'll get back to that in just a few seconds. So what happens next in the Zoia is that I take the input and I send it into a set of 7 comparators. And the comparators are there so that the Zoia can interpret which value coming back in, and of course what button presses that correspond to. So the way a comparator works, just to do that very briefly, is that it has 3 pads. it has what's known as a positive input, a negative input, and an output. And the way it works is that as long as the positive input is equal to or greater than the value at the negative input, then the output from the comparator will be a value of 1. So it's a switch that is controlled by the value of, or whether a value of an incoming voltage, or CV in this case, is higher or lower than a certain value. So in order to make this interpret these, or get a result that registers these 8 different values, well, 0 you don't have to do anything because 0 is always 0, but I want the first comparator to know whether button number 1 has been pushed. And I don't want to get too close to 0.2126 just in case the voltage can fluctuate a bit. So just for simplicity's sake, I just do half the value between this and the previous value, which is 0, so 0.1 roughly. So I'll put in here 0.1038. And this is will always trigger when I push the first button. The second one gets a value of 0.3067, which is sort of halfway between 0.4131 and 0.2126. And so it goes on. We notice that the difference between these values becomes smaller and smaller as we progress up the scale here, and that is because when you're putting resistors in parallel, you're actually making a sort of a logarithmic output rather than a linear one. So, but I'm using all these values, and for the last one there, it says 0.6934 and 0.7188. They're quite close together, and I've gone for 0.7050, which consistently selects the right or triggers the right comparator. Okay? So one nice thing about making sure, as I did now, that the lowest value is on the left and rising to the right, and also the same on my table here, is that you can use that for the next step of the patch, which is to create a switch which allows the Zoia to respond to what combination of, or to know, I suppose, which combination of buttons these things are. Because now you can't just do it directly from here. Well, you could, but it would be a little bit messy. Because the thing about the comparators now is that when you activate the first one, only one of them is triggered. When you do the second one, 2 of them are triggered. When you do the third one, 3 of them are triggered, etc. So, and that allows us to control the switch quite easily, actually, which is very convenient. Now, the way a switch works is that it has, this is an out switch, which has a single input, in this case set to 1, fixed value. It has a channel selector, which is the one that selects which of the output channels, only one of the output channels will get the value sent over from the input. And in this case, we have 8 channels. Why do we have 8 channels? Because there are 8 different stages that this set of buttons can be in. It can be 0, it can be left, middle, right, left, right, middle, right, or all 3. 8 different stages. And these correspond, of course, to a certain number of comparators being triggered. If there are no comparators triggered, we are on 0. And this is channel 1 on our switch. If we get one button pushed, the left button rather, not just one button, any button, but the left button, comparator 1 triggers, and we want to move the switch to channel 2 to indicate that left button has been pushed. And so it is for all these combinations of button presses. Now, the way the switch selects its channel is by taking 1 and dividing by the number of channels. So we have 8 channels, which means that each step is controlled by a value range of 0.125, 1 divided by 8. Channel 1 is selected when the incoming value on the channel selector is between 0 and 0.125, or rather 12499. Channel 2, 0.125, 0 to 0.2499, etc. So an easy way now for us to select the channel is to use that to our advantage, because when these comparators are triggered, as I mentioned earlier, all the comparators up to the highest one that is activated are triggered at the same time. And we want channel 1 to be activated when one of them is triggered. You can think of it in that way. We want channel 2 to be activated when one of them is triggered, channel 1 when none are triggered, and channel 3 when 2 are triggered, etc. So in order for this set of comparators to control the switch, all you can do is to connect all of them, the outputs, to the channel selector, and you do it with a connection strength of 12.5. Apparently one is 13.5. I don't know how that happened. So I'll do 12.6 to be on the safe side. So that means that in a way the switch is now just counting the number of comparators that are being triggered. That's quite an easy way to control it. And also when doing this, always make sure that the value sent here is a little bit higher than what you need. That's a good rule of thumb. So if something isn't triggered until you get past 12.0.125, then use a connection strength of 12.51. We've got a good margin of error there, and it's always nice to have. So now this switch is sending out a value of 1 to each of 8 channels depending on the combination of buttons in accordance with this table. How do we use that in a patch for something else? Well, first of all, as a visual indication now, I sent channel 2 here. It's just connected to 4 pixels down here, just to show that button 2 is that the left button is pressed, and then when the middle button is pressed, channel 3, that output is connected to these pixels. That's just a visual representation. A convenient way to control other things in the patch, and I would recommend this, you could do it straight from the switch and saying that, okay, now I got button 1 and 2 pressed, for instance, which is channel 4. And then you patch that into whatever mechanism, algorithm in your patch is supposed to be triggered by that combination of those two being pressed at the same time. But it is easier to separate the buttons again at this point, because it makes it easier and more flexible to patch things up later in the patch. So what I've done here is that every combination of buttons that includes the left button have been patched up to this value module here. So you can see channel 2, channel 4, channel 6, channel 8 all have send the value. That's also all the combinations that include the left button. And likewise here for the second button, that is channels 3, 4, and 7, 8. And lastly, it is the third button, channel, let's see, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Yeah. And then the output from these value modules is what you will use to go further into your patch, because these again are triggered, they are activated and given a value of 1 whenever the corresponding button is pushed, regardless of the combination of buttons being pushed. So that is the principle of it, and an easy way to create an algorithm to interpret the incoming signal as a combination of 3 button presses. So that's it really. That's what I wanted to show you today. I hope you found that interesting or useful or inspirational or anything else. The thing about watching videos about Zoia patching, for me, I don't know if it's like that for anyone else, but what it does, it might inspire me to do any kind of patching on the Zoia, and I might get an idea that has nothing to do with what I just watched, or there might be just a little way of doing something in a video that also triggers an idea in my head about something I may want to do with the Zoia, and I realize a new way of doing something that I hadn't thought of before. So it's all very good, I think. So that is one possible way of adding 3 extra buttons. And of course, if you wanted to do this officially, you would probably make a little box with some stump switches on it and make a little proper circuit board. I could do that one day just to demonstrate how that would look, how that could look. And I do have 3 stump switches from the Zoia lying around as well, actually. Yeah, another use for the control port. So I think all that remains for me to say is thank you for watching, and I'll see you in my next one. If you enjoy this, please like, share, comment, subscribe, join me on Patreon, buy me a coffee, etc., etc. Yes, goodbye for now.